Hi, and welcome to this episode of John's Model Kit Review. In today's fun classic model kit review video, we'll be looking at the Otaki or Arii Supermarine Spitfire Mk VIII in 1/48 scale. This is Arii kit number A333-800. This kit was released by Otaki in 1975, and at the time of its release, it was the most accurate Spitfire kit available in 1/48 scale. In this video, we'll be taking a look at the in-process kit, and we'll talk about the fit of the major parts, as well as the surface detailing on the exterior of the kit. We'll also go through the kit instructions, and we'll talk about any problem areas to watch out for in those. We'll look at the detailing on the smaller parts, and that includes the parts for the interior of the kit, as well as the landing gear and other small bits. We'll also take a look at the clear parts, and we'll talk about the clarity and the fit of these. We'll also talk about any known accuracy issues with this kit. We'll look at the color and marking guides, and we'll talk about the decals themselves and the quality of those. We'll also talk about how this kit compares to the newer Eduard Spitfire Mk VIII in 1/48 scale. Looking at the history of the Spitfire Mk VIII, the Spitfire Mk VIII actually came after the Spitfire Mk IX in terms of production and introduction into service, and while the Spitfire Mk IX was a hasty lash-up of a more powerful Merlin engine to the Spitfire Mk V airframe, the Spitfire Mk VIII incorporated many structural changes that were intended for the Mk IX in the first place. The Spitfire Mk VIII did not reach operational units until July of 1943, and thanks to their longer range, they served in the Mediterranean theater of operations. They were flown by the RAF as well as U.S. Army Air Force pilots, and were deployed by the RAF against the Japanese armed forces in India and Burma. The Royal Australian Air Force fought against the Japanese forces using the Mk VIII in the Pacific area as well. There were three sub-versions: the F Mk VIII, powered by the Merlin 63 engine, the LF Mk VIII, powered by the Merlin 66, and the HF Mk VIII, powered by the Merlin 70. The performance of the Spitfire Mk VIII depended on which variant of Merlin engine was installed in it. In comparison with the Spitfire Mk IX, the Mk VIII had a retractable tailwheel and smaller ailerons. Three types of wingtips were utilized on this version of Spitfire. The Mk VIII was the third most numerous version of the Spitfire, with 1,658 examples built. Armament on the Spitfire Mk VIII consisted of two 20mm cannon and four 30mm machine guns, in addition to underwing bombs. Looking at what comes in the box, there are three sprues of tan plastic parts, in addition to a single sprue of clear parts, so this kit is not parts heavy. Going through the kit instructions, in step 1 we're assembling the cockpit. As you would expect from a kit of this age, the parts are somewhat basic. I had to remove an ejector pen mark on the base of the seat pan. There's not a whole lot of detail on the instrument panel, but once this is detail painted, I think it should be sufficient for what can be seen through the cockpit canopy. I do have a True Details resin replacement interior for the Hasegawa kit, and I may use some of the parts to dress up this Otaki kit. Specifically the cockpit seat. I like the one with the molded in seat belts. That's very nice. I may use that. And I may also use the control panel that comes with this set. In step 2, we're installing the cockpit interior into the starboard fuselage half. I don't anticipate any problems here. In this photo, you can see there is a little bit of sidewall detail that is on the fuselage halves, and that should look sufficient once that's detail painted. In step 3, we're adding the prop hub, and then we're closing up the fuselage halves around the prop hub and the interior. Setting things together, it looks like we'll be able to get a very nice seam on the upper side of the fuselage, and the same goes for the lower fuselage seam. These seams will require cleanup, but they should clean up very nicely, and I don't anticipate having to use any filler in these areas. In step 4, we're building the wing assembly. I deviated from this step by gluing the upper wing halves to the fuselage halves first, and this allowed me to get a filler-free wing to fuselage join on each side. Even though I deviated from the assembly sequence, it looks like I'll be able to get a very nice fit between the upper and lower wing halves. In step 5, we're adding the wing assembly and the tail planes to the fuselage. It looks like we'll be able to get a very good fit between the wing and the fuselage on the lower side. And the tail planes themselves fit very precisely with no filler needed. In step 6, we're building the main landing gear. Looking at these parts, these are fairly basic, but I think they'll look good once they're detail painted. The landing gear doors have no detail on the outer surfaces, and so I plan on replacing these with some Eduard landing gear doors. I think that will dress up the kit just a little bit. Looking at the stock wheels, these look sufficient. These will look nice once they're detail painted. In step 7, we're adding the underside radiators. We're also adding the landing gear to the aircraft, and we're adding the oil cooler underneath the nose of the aircraft. The radiators themselves fit very precisely into the wing. These things just kind of press fit in, and they fit perfectly. You shouldn't need any putty in this area. One known accuracy issue with this kit is the flatness of the lower wing where it joins the fuselage. You can see that in this photo. Thankfully, this is not very noticeable when the kit is sitting on the shelf. If we look at the lower wing from an Eduard Spitfire VIII, we can see that there is a pronounced dip where the wing joins the fuselage at the rear of the wing. In step 8, we're adding the prop and spinner and the exhaust and cannons and clear parts to the kit. The spinner itself is very nicely shaped. It's almost identical in shape to the Eduard spinner. If we look at the prop as well, the shape and diameter of the prop is almost identical to the Eduard parts. With a little bit of careful dry fitting, I was able to get a very precise fit on the clear parts on this kit. I plan on polishing these out prior to installation on the kit. One area that looks just a little bit off to me is it looks like there's a little bit too much rake to the front windshield on this kit compared to the Eduard kit. I think there should be a little bit less on the Spitfire VIII. Looking at the exhausts on the kit, these are very, very basic, and I plan on replacing these with some leftover exhaust from an Eduard kit. I think this will really dress up the exterior of the kit. Likewise, the cannon barrels that are included with this kit are very anemic looking, and I plan on replacing these with some cannon barrels that were left over from an Eduard kit. The final step in construction is step 9, and we're just adding the standing pilot figure to a display base. The pilot figure is not very well molded, and it has a huge sink mark, so I'm not even going to bother with that. Moving on to the marking guide and the decals. There's one decal option that's included with this kit. Looking at the decals themselves, these are incredibly basic. There are no stencils, and unfortunately these have yellowed over time, so they really aren't usable. As a side note here, there's a very nice color print that's included with this kit. It has two different marking options, but the decals and the marking guides are not included in this boxing, so I'm not exactly sure what happened there. My plan for the decals on this kit is to use some leftover decals from my Eduard Spitfire VIII kit. There are 6 marking options that are included in that kit, and I'm sure I'll be able to use one of those on this kit. Looking at the external surface detailing on the kit, it is represented by very fine recessed panel lines. There's some subtle fabric detail on the ailerons and on the tail surfaces. There's also some engraved rivet detail on the underside of the wing. And overall, the surface detail is very nicely done. It is not overdone, and I think it'll look good once it's weathered. If we take a look at the surface detailing on the Eduard Spitfire VIII, we can see that there is much more extensive engraved detail and rivet detail on the Eduard kit. In conclusion, I think this is one of the most accurate model kits to come out of the mid-70s. I'm shocked at how well the moldings hold up today. I didn't find any major mold glitches on the exterior of the kit. And surprisingly, every part that I compared the shape and dimensional accuracy with an Eduard part, it seemed to match almost perfectly. So Otaki really got this kit right as far as shape accuracy goes and dimensional accuracy. As you'd expect from a kit of this age, the interior is on the basic side. I think that'll be easily dressed up with a few resin replacement parts. If you're the type of modeler who only builds the latest and greatest model kits, I would highly recommend getting one of the Eduard Spitfire VIII kits. They're brilliant. Although this Arii Spitfire Mk VIII has been surpassed in accuracy and level of detail by the newer Eduard offerings, I'm actually shocked at how good this kit still is. And I would highly recommend this kit to younger modelers or modelers getting back into the hobby, or even more experienced modelers who just want an easier build than the Eduard kit offers. Well, I'd love to know what you guys think. If any of you out there have built the Arii or Otaki Spitfire Mk VIII, please feel free to comment in the comment section below. As always, I hope you found this video entertaining and informative, and until next time, model on.